I'm Jim Moore. I'm a retired federal agent, 25 years with ATF, the Organized Crime and Racketeering Strike Force, and Interpol, where I directed international investigations of robbery, rape, murder, terrorism. I'm here to introduce excerpts from an interview with Dennis Dechaine on March 22nd, 2004. As many of you know, Dennis Dechaine is serving a life sentence for the torture and strangulation murder of 12-year-old Sarah Cherry in July of 1988. He's serving a life sentence, and in Maine, life means until you're dead. Dennis has always maintained his innocence from the very beginning. He requested DNA tests before his trial, but it was denied. And over the years, the state has consistently concealed scientific evidence that would prove it physically impossible for Dennis to have committed this crime. I began looking into this case convinced that Dennis was guilty because I'd never seen the justice system in my 25 years in law enforcement make such an egregious mistake. But it didn't take long to find out that he couldn't be guilty, that the evidence proved him innocent. The evidence in this case, the state's evidence, proves that Dennis Dechaine was wrongfully convicted. If you want to understand all the ramifications and details of the case, you can read my book, Human Sacrifice. This isn't a sales pitch. I'm not taking any royalties for the book. Recently, under a new law, the Maine State Police Laboratory has been forced to test the blood found under Sarah Cherry's fingernails. And they found the DNA there of two persons, Sarah Cherry herself and a male person who is not Dennis Dechaine.
Terrible crime. Her little body was found right here.
A young girl is murdered.
We have to find out the truth. Did you kill Sarah Cherry?
We all believed that if we found the truck, we would find her.
A killer sent away for the rest of his life.
Your truck is here, the body's here, and you come out of the woods over here.
No evidence of her found in his truck. I doubt very seriously if he walked 2 to 3 miles from here.
16 years later, some say the police got the wrong man.
I swear to God, I did not take that girl's life.
You got a 12-year-old girl missing late at night, and you don't detain this guy? What's wrong with that picture? Good morning, how are you?
Morning. But you know what I want you to do now? I want you to take us back to that day. Back to the day.
We're talking about
murder
July 6, 1988. I went basically wandering around the Bowden Woods, found a place to park my truck, and I did drugs. And when the sun started going down, I decided it was time to go home, and I couldn't remember how I'd gotten in there. I was wandering around trying to find my truck, and this old couple happened upon me. They said, "Can we help you? You lost?" A half hour, 45 minutes into the search for my truck, we happened on a police cruiser, a sheriff's car, and we flagged them down, and I jumped in with them, and that's when my nightmare began.
Were you still high?
Oh, I was, yes, very much so. And it was terrifying. They start asking me questions, and I mean, getting in my face, yelling and screaming, that type of thing. This went on, and they brought in a state police detective. And then he said, "Are you willing, when we find your truck, are you willing to let us have it to do an analysis. He says, well, if Sarah Cherry has been in your truck, we will know. I said, well, by all means, take the truck. Okay, they held me there another hour or so, and then they took me home. The next day, they show up in the morning, cops show up in my yard with a search warrant.
So basically, except for the drugs, you were basically a good kid?
That was my problem. That was my mistress. If you look at how things were going in my life, you know, business-wise, and finally getting to a point where we had to have accountants tell us to spend money to keep the government from getting it, we were doing well.
If you didn't do it, if you didn't murder this little girl, then who did?
Somebody who knew her. I'm convinced of that. This was Sarah Cherry's first babysitting job. She had been asked by her mom not to let anybody into the house that she didn't know, and if anybody showed up in the driveway, to call her. She never called her mother.
Let me ask you something. Did you kill Sarah Cherry?
Absolutely not. I did not kill Sarah Cherry. And for that matter, I've never hurt anybody in my life.
Well-rehearsed guy.
I couldn't read him.
Very, very hard to read.
It's just a strange coincidence to me. Some little girl is missing right over here. My car happens to be found right by her body.
But you can't find it.
I don't know, that's still, that's a hell of a coincidence.
That night, we drove to the town of Waterville to meet with Michaela Murphy, the defense attorney who took over the case in 2003. We asked her for her account of Decaine's story.
He was lost in the woods, and he came out of the woods. He was exhausted, and he started making statements to the police that did not add up and did not make sense because he was terrified that they were going to find out that he'd been in the woods shooting up drugs.
I mean, they found rope from his car. They had some things that supposedly fell out of his truck at the abduction scene. I mean, it sounds kind of overwhelming. You'll agree to that,
absolutely.
right?
I certainly don't fault them at all for focusing on him. That once somebody's charged, the investigation stops and the search for truth stops. And at that point, there's a major shift in everything that's going on the law enforcement side, which is now we have to make our case and we have to convict the guy.
Do we have any DNA evidence about this guy?
After trial's over, the appeals are lost. The state of Maine lab determined that the DNA that was under the victim's fingernails is male DNA, and that male DNA is not Dennis Dechaine's DNA.
So this guy's out there.
That's the part of it that I think is really hard for the state of Maine to even think about, because if Dennis Dechaine is found not guilty, this monster is out there, and they're responsible for that.
Very long way to go on this guy.
I have a different, going there, I felt that Dennis could be the guy. After speaking with her, she made a lot of sense to me about a lot of things, and now I have more of an open mind towards Dennis, that maybe he could be the wrong guy.
He could be the wrong guy.